in this episode of Let's Talk.
How much influence do you think society has over you?
Impossible to not be influenced by society nowadays, right? Like, it's so, like, in our faces.
Tina buys something from Prada, everyone is just gonna run after her because Tina buys Prada. So it's like they've built society to make it as something as just like we follow you just because we follow you, not because Prada's good.
It was, I don't know, hard to separate like what I actually wanted to do from what I just wanted to copy because I thought it was cool and it looked awesome, like they had the life and they were really pretty and the style and everything about it was so great.
I don't know, like I'll see an influencer, like you were saying, cooking something, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to make this like today.
Hey guys, so welcome to today's talk. So I have a question for you guys, and it is that how much influence do you think society has over you?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of impossible to not be influenced by society nowadays, right? Like, it's so, like, in our faces. Before, it used to be kind of like, just like, oh, if you watch TV and you saw like certain commercials, things like that, that would be your influence. But now we're like constantly being marketed to, right? In everything that we do. Like, if you play an app, there's like a little like mid-game commercial, right? You watch a YouTube video before where it was like, oh, I'm going to watch a YouTube video for like 3 hours and there's no ads. And now there's like an ad every 5 minutes of a YouTube video, you know, on Instagram, on Facebook, on every, like all social media. It's kind of like, all right, 5 posts and then an ad, 5 posts and then an ad.
And it listens to you.
Right. Yeah, 100% listens to you. Right. We're definitely being targeted in the way that they influence us. But I think it's a huge influence over our lives right now. And I think the important thing is to just be conscious of where it's taking us.
So like what you're saying about like social media, society has a lot over you on what they want you to be and not what you want to be and what you want to make society. So it's like, I'm going to put in the table like the topic of influencers of like I'm going to put an example. There's this famous person called Tina. So if Tina buys something from Prada, everyone is just going to run after her because Tina buys Prada. So it's like they've built society to make it as something as just like we follow you just because we follow you, not because Prada's good or Prada's bad. Like we just do it because you have what we call the clout and the good things that everyone wants to see and everyone wants to be.
Yeah, they have a lot of influence over you. When I was like 15, I guess, I was really obsessed with YouTubers and anything they did, I would want to copy it because it's just what seemed really cool. And it was, I don't know, hard to separate like what I actually wanted to do from what I just wanted to copy because I thought it was cool and it looked awesome, like they had the life and they were really pretty and the style and everything about it was so great. But what was actually my style and what was I actually interested in? It's hard to separate it.
Yeah, I mean, it still happens to me now sometimes. Like, I go on social media and it's like, I don't know, like I'll see an influencer, like you were saying, cooking something, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to make this like today. And it's like, it still has sometimes a pretty big influence over my life, and like, I'll be scrolling and I find a shirt or something like that, and it's like, okay, now I want to go, and then I find myself like on this website for a store, and I'm like, why am I looking for clothes right now? It's like the middle of the day. So we need to, I feel like it's really important to be aware that, like you were saying, we're constantly being targeted. Maybe not officially, but it's like a marketing kind of thing where everything we say, everything we think, like 5 seconds later we go on social media and it appears. Yeah. So it's like being aware of, am I allowing it to really affect me and like influence my decisions, or am I gonna be like confident in who I am, what I want? And yes, like social media is there and it's cool, but like surface level.
That's so funny you said Tina, and I definitely get influenced by Tina because funny enough, I went to New York like 3 months ago to get my wedding dress, and there's actually a Prada bag. I don't know if you said it just to say it, but there's this like side bag. What's it called? I forgot what it's called. And it's a crossbody, but it's like an old version that came back. And it's funny because we went into the store in New York and the guy was like, they come in every day and they're sold out right away. Like we get like a couple, but because a bunch of influencers, I saw it from this girl too on Instagram and I showed Dante, I was like, it's so pretty, I want it. It was crazy when I was in the store and the guy said, we get them, girls come in, get them, and then we get new stock the day after. But I was like, that's the power of influencers. And just like with the swipe up on Instagram, the Amazon links, oh my God. Everybody's like, oh, just swipe up my Amazon list and like all the things that they buy. It's like shopping is definitely an area where I get influenced on a lot for getting things online. Like it's not an area I have control over, for sure.
I feel like it's something unconsciously. Like even if we're like determined, like we're not gonna do it. Like once you see a swipe up or once you see someone doing it, like you're just like, we're doing it. Or sometimes like you're looking for something and then you end up looking for something else. So I swipe up on one shirt, but then I was like, oh, but that one too, because I saw, oh no, and that one too. So it just becomes like a domino until you're like influenced completely, like you're just like underwater in what they wanted you to be in.
I think it goes beyond social media. Like what you're saying, oh, it seems harmless and we do it subconsciously. It applies to like society as a whole. Like we see what's going on in society and it seems harmless and it seems like, oh, let's just go with the flow. And before we know it, we're like in the same kind of things that we see people are doing, and we feel like it's normal because we see everyone doing it. But really, like, what's going on, you know? Like, what are they really doing, and do we really believe that, and is that really, like, does that really align with our values and what we stand for? Are we letting those things that we see everyone else doing influence, like, our decisions? So I feel like it sounds like it's just social media, but it's way deeper than that.
And I feel like it's our need. I was actually talking about this with someone yesterday, that it's a little bit of our need to feel accepted by others around us, right? So that's why I believe it's like the root of why we get influenced by things, right? Influenced by society, what people are doing around us, the need to feel accepted by those around us.
Growing up, like, my parents were pretty strict with me, and like it was kind of like the opposite of the normal as far as like what my friends around me had in like middle school and high school. Like I didn't have a phone until I was in like my junior year, and just like not having a phone because my parents didn't allow it, they just didn't believe on it. Like me and my sister growing up, it was always like, you know, people, well, at least when I was in high school and middle school, they would go to like the movies. We were never allowed to go to the movies. We were always hanging out with my family, and like my friends would always make fun, like, you never hang out with us. I remember during summers, like, I didn't have a phone, and like, it was kind of like I disappeared those 3 months. We would go to work with my parents. It would be like 24/7 with my parents, like every activity. And it was kind of like, you know, like they couldn't understand like why. You know, we grew up in church since I was like 9, and it was always, they always try to make sure to tell us, like, you know, like the Bible, like honor your parents. I tell this to Dante sometimes, like, I believe always, like, oh, if I'm a good daughter, if I do good things, like my kids are gonna be good, like they're gonna be the same with me. So I always tried, like, I wasn't perfect obviously, but I tried to like honor them and do as they would tell me. And like, you know, I wouldn't question when they wouldn't let me go out. But it was hard in high school. Like I didn't let it get to me to the point of like, okay, you know, like maybe it's true, or maybe they're like, my parents are manipulating me. But it was hard. Like, it was still hard to hear them say, like, you know, all these comments about like, oh, you live in like in jail and like you can't come out, and like things and comments that were kind of annoying when they're coming from your best friends. And it was just like it makes you down. But it was kind of like, you know, I'm thankful that God always like allowed me to not like, you know, right, like, yeah, not necessarily question, because right, I don't think I ever question. Of course it gets to you. It was funny, I'm thinking of like, you know, I didn't have a phone to junior year, so, but I did have an iTouch. And you know how there's apps that you could iMessage, and like I was telling this to Dante and he would make fun of me. Like sometimes with that influence and like wanting to fit in and wanting to feel like part of them, you know, I got one of these apps to have a phone number so that they could text me to. And I told Dante this once, like sometimes I would fake text myself. Like I would send myself messages just to like pretend to my friend I had other friends. It was like that peer pressure, that pressure of them not feeling like wanting to feel left out, or like, so that's just funny. I was thinking about them.
And that's definitely the influence of society, I think, like the whole thing with your parents, right? Because we were talking about earlier how like you watch any TV show or any movie, it's like when the parent's strict, they're the enemy. Like they're the bad guy in the movie, right? It's like, oh, that parent is the worst. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, right? But for me, like I also grew up in church, and my parents maybe were not as strict as Melissa's, but they were like, you know, still like on top of us, and they made sure that we were doing things we were supposed to be doing. And a lot of times I would watch these TV shows, and like the kids would get upset that their parents didn't let them do something. I'm like, well, that's what your parents should be doing, right? Like it was like the point of the movie was like, oh, the parents are bad because they're doing this. And I'm like, no, the parents are right. They should be taking care of you. They should not be allowing you to do these crazy things you're trying to do, you know? But it's like society has taught us that like, oh, you get to do whatever you want in life, and no one should stand in your way. if anybody stands in your way, that person's bad.
What you were saying now about peer pressure, it's especially like now in high school, especially like middle school and high school, peer pressure is a very big thing that we let get to ourselves, like get into us, and that's a bigger pressure than we are to ourselves, because like we say that our friends around us are like the people and like they're the ones that know us the best. Like for them to be pressuring us to go against our own things, like that's big.
Yeah.
So like in a case like mine, I've been a Christian for 10 years, so it was like, oh, you're Christian? Like, oh, no, you can't do this. And I'll be like, yeah, I can, because I want to be accepted for society. Yeah. And so I just let it influence me by just like breaking what I was. So peer pressure is a very like harsh thing going on right now, that it's one of the biggest influences other than social media and all of that. Yeah. But like after those things, peer pressure is one of the biggest things because it's happening in your day to day. So that's a very big influence in us and in society.
It's subtle. It's not necessarily that they come at you like they're gonna stop being your friend. Like they don't tell you any of that, but you can feel it. You feel the pressure of like they're not gonna accept me, and it's awkward, or the room gets tense, and you don't know how to act. So you just start to go along with it.
Yeah, it's funny like what you guys are talking about, because I was actually talking to a friend yesterday, and she doesn't know the Lord and she's not a Christian, but she knows like what I tell her and what I talk to her about, and there's so much that she doesn't really get about my lifestyle and like the decisions that I make. Like she's like, girl, you're still single, like how do you deal without like sleeping around? Like you need experience, like you need to put yourself out there, like that's what life is about, like this is why you're young, like these are the things that you should be doing now. And she doesn't get it. Like she doesn't get why I choose to do the thing, like do my life the way I do it. So it's like me, it's not that she, I feel like she judges me, but she genuinely just doesn't understand, and a lot of time they just don't understand. And it's kind of like what we're called to is to explain it. I feel like in the Christian world, like it's kind of just, it's like this because it's like this and there's no explanation. So for example, I was talking to her about, why we don't believe in sex before marriage. And like, I guess from her perspective, it was just like, oh, because it's written in the Bible, like it's just wrong. And yeah, like that's true. But I was like, have you ever heard of soul ties? And I was like explaining the concept to her and like what literally happens when you have sex with a person, because God created it for a husband and a wife. And every time you like sleep with someone, a piece of you goes to that person, and there's an exchange that takes place. And I was telling her, like, so imagine a guy that's had a body count of like 30, and then by the time he gets to marriage, it's like you're getting so much less of that person than you should be. So I think it's really important to like explain those things to the people closest to us, like the people that don't get it, even if we feel like they're still not gonna get it. Like it's just our job to kind of talk to them about it and like just put it out there.
I think that's so key what you said about like not understanding, because we don't, like it's not explained, or we're not used to talking about these things. Because I believe that too, like growing up, like, like they don't do it, like at least like the people around me, and I think friends, and like especially when it's like people around you that know you, I don't think they do it genuinely to hurt you or to like make you like, it's just because they don't know. Like, like I remember with my mom, like when it came to friends and certain things, she would tell me all the time, and my dad too, like in my case, I grew up with my dad and my mom, and he would sit down and talk to me about certain things. He would be like, a lot of your friends, like the group friend I had, they don't have their dads there to tell them that they love them. And like that was something he made sure to always like let me know and know that I was like, that I knew that I had a father in my house that loved me. And it sucks because it's just they didn't get it, they didn't have it, and they can't understand what they didn't have. And obviously to social media and influencers, like it's a whole other level. Like when we're talking about influencers, that's something that like if only they really knew also like the power that they're having over all these people. I followed this YouTuber, and I was seeing someone telling her today, like, watching your videos helped me so much in my depression. And it's kind of like, I don't know why I went this way, but it was kind of like to the influencers, I mean, up there, like seeing all the things that they're like in a good way, but also in the bad way, like all the things that like they have an impact of. And like obviously to our level, we all do. I liked a lot what you said, because it's like, it's kind of our job to like bring that light and like kind of help, because it's not that they want to do it in a bad way, it's just that they don't know. And if we have those answers that thankfully we've been blessed to like know in those areas, it's like we have a big job also to like bring light and clarify to them those doubts and kind of explain why we do certain things a different way, why we believe what we believe, and not just kind of like, oh no, well, my parents said it and that's it. Right. Because then that also gives that like, you know, okay, you're just doing what your parents tell you, but like you don't know what you're doing also. So I think that's very important to be able to like talk about it and like explain.
And then they develop like this concept of Christianity that we are just like, we just do what we're told, and we're just like these robots that whatever they tell us we do it and we obey, but we don't question, and like we have no type of like,
You can't have fun.
exactly, like you can't have fun, you can't listen to like any music, you're just like this boring person that goes to sleep at 9 p.m. on Friday nights, and that's it. And that's cool, like I do it sometimes, but you know, that's not all we do.
Yeah, I mean, our culture has, I mean, talking about like how culture views us as Christians, you know, like it's a very bad image. Like what they point out to is like, you know, those small churches that are out there like picketing and telling people they're going to go to hell and they're going to die. And it's like, yo, that's not the body of Christ. The body of Christ is about acceptance and love and like, you know, trying to help you get to where you want to be and trying to help you get closer to God. You know, it's not about like a man telling you what to do or your parents telling you, hey, this is what you need to do. But it's about, you know, in the essence of it, it's about people trying to help you get closer to God and to have a relationship with him, right? And then once we like have that, we are influenced less by the things around us, right? Because we have, like you were saying, your friend doesn't understand because she doesn't understand what it's like to have that assurance that there's a God that cares about her and accepts her and loves her the way you do, right? So you don't need to go out looking for it and like, oh yeah, you need to go sleep around and experiment, and because you don't need that. You know who you are. You know, there's nothing you need to experiment, right? Like everything you need is in God, right? So you're not influenced as much by the things around you. So it's very important that we talk about it constantly, right? And that we remind ourselves how we are accepted by God. We remind ourselves that we don't need to let ourselves be influenced by these things, right? Because even us, I mean, all of us, I think, can agree that sometimes, you know, like we've talked about now, we get influenced by things that we don't mean to. And it's like, okay, like I don't need this. You know, I don't need to feel this acceptance from this person. I don't need to do this viral video. I don't need to buy this thing because this person has it. It doesn't make me more or less of a person. Right, because that's the feeling that people are after when they're letting themselves be influenced, right? To feel like more or less of something, you know. So when we have God in the middle of our lives, we don't need that.
As we're like talking more about it, like transitioning it, like growing up, like middle school and in high school, and like now as we get older and in church, and you choose like your community and your friends and the people it's easier in those areas where like your beliefs and those areas that you are like firm on with God, because you still get influenced. Like I was saying, I get influenced in shopping a lot, but it's cool to see also that flip of like we're still being influenced, but those areas that we're stronger in, maybe after today, like, you know, like acknowledging the influence that we also have and like bringing light to those areas, and not just kind of like shudder with the answers that they're used to, or like, oh, as Christians, you know, we don't do this, right? Like we just don't listen to worldly music, we just wait till getting married, like having sex till we get married, and actually explaining it. Like I don't know, like a culture of like explaining those things. I feel very excited after. Like I never forget. Like
No, because like I feel like sometimes we think like we limit ourselves because we think I'm not an influencer, I don't have this big platform, so I can't speak up. Like I can't. But
Or sometimes we're afraid to do it.
yeah, but like
we don't want to say it awkward.
exactly.
rejected.
But how many times, guys, like, are you sitting in a group of friends that maybe aren't from church, and they're just like making fun of things, and you kind of just let it slide, like you don't really address it, but it's kind of like our job, like I was saying, and it's like I feel like it's time that we start addressing those uncomfortable topics and like just explaining them, even if it gets awkward. Like if they're really our friends, if they're really your friends, like they will understand and they will respect you. And if they're not, then like if they don't, then you probably shouldn't be hanging around these people anyway. So it's like, I don't know, it's exciting. Like it's exciting.
And even like you're saying, like Dani was saying, like it's subtle how we get influenced in things. We could start making that difference and be subtle, like little by little, because those things are gonna stay within them. Like I'm pretty sure your friend, like I don't know what happened after, but that stayed with her. Like, you know, she must, like, even whether she's willing to like talk about it or not. So I definitely think that's a goal, like to really like, even if it influences one person, like if you're hanging out with 4 or 5 friends and little by little, like they ask questions. Maybe next time they bring it up, they ask you deeper, like, hey, what did you mean by this? Things like that. So I definitely think we get influenced by society, but we also have a power to influence others with our beliefs and bring in the light and truth to the things that for so long we
Kept us in a fog.
yeah. Thank you guys. Let's go influence others.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's literally go right now.
Hey guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. See you next Thursday.